to today's seminar. I first want to acknowledge that we're here on the unceded traditional territories of the Musqueam First Nation, and more broadly, the Coast Salish people, including the Tsleil-Waututh and the Squamish nations. It's a fact that I think we here in IRES are increasingly incorporating into our daily realities, you know, not just the kind of once in a class or once in a seminar kind of statement. I think you're all with me on that journey. Today, I get to introduce Evelyn Arriagada because Leila is online and in Germany, Evelyn's supervisor. So Evelyn is a PhD candidate now. She is just finishing her fourth year because she started in January, unusually. And she has been working for years already in this topic of women and water activists in Chile, in particular with a group that's called AMIPA, which is a women's group in Chile. And they're working on mapping conflicts associated with water protection. And that's what you're going to hear about today. So Evelyn has a crazy list of honors. She is a public scholar. She is a Vanier scholar, a Killam scholar, and also a Beca scholar from Chile. And her previous work involved gender anthropology, sociology about resource conflicts in Chile. And unlike many of our students, because of her past roles at universities in Chile, she has supervised already numerous undergraduate and master's students, and of course published a few papers. So I'm really looking forward to this. I got to see Evelyn in her first couple of months at IRES, and I haven't really seen her work since then. So this is going to be a treat for me. I hand it to you.
Thank you, Kai. Okay. Thanks, Kai, for that amazing presentation, amazing introduction, and thanks everyone for being here today. This is a nice way in we are talking today. It's more friendly than the other one that is kind of intimidating. So I'm glad that it worked that way. So I'm going to present today some preliminary results of the work I've been doing in this. Oh my God, what is happening? Oh, this, okay. Got it. Yes. Okay. It's not working. Dan, help me, please. So you are not counting the minutes right now, okay, right? I just have 15, yes. Nice. Okay, so I will be presenting today some of the preliminary results of part of my dissertation, the work that I've been doing here in this amazing archipelago in southern Chile, which is also the place I was born and raised, the Chiloé archipelago. Why this place is so important? Chiloé has been considered one of the priority areas for ecosystem conservation in the world because of this biodiversity and cultural uniqueness. Also, indigenous and peasant women have key roles in agricultural patrimony, oral history in this territory, but they have been often excluded from decision-making instances. There are multiple water-related problems in this archipelago, caused by the overlapping effects of climate change and also other environmental interventions. As you can see here, there is a changing pattern in the precipitations with more intense rainfall during the winter and the fall, and a decreasing rainfall during the summer. Also, some extractivist activities as the overexploitation of pompon, which is a moss of the sphagnum family, particularly critical and preserve, filter, retain, and provide water. A women-only organization was formed in 2021 to make visible some of these problems, particularly the water-related problems in the archipelago. The Asamblea de Mujeres Insulares por las Aguas, or AMIPA, is a group formed by 20 indigenous and non-indigenous women. All of them from different backgrounds and experiences as activists, researchers, and professionals also as defenders of the territory. In this group of women, we have also an ancestral political authority, the Lonco Clementina Lepio, which is more or less the equivalent of an indigenous chief here. In March of 2021, this group started to map the water-related conflicts they would know in the archipelago. And they come to this list of 30 water-related problems and conflicts in the archipelago. And the number is a pretty amazing one when compared with this map of the Institute of Human Rights in Chile that have identified 131 social environmental conflicts in the whole country, total. And this is not just water related, but the whole environmental issues. And just 4 located in the Chiloé archipelago. So 30 conflicts, water related conflicts is pretty much a lot. I started to work with this group of women in April 2021, some few months before or after they was formed as organization. And since then, we have been working in improving and enhancing and also continuing this mapping chronology to this day and projecting to the future. In relation to this, one of my research questions is how, through co-producing a map of water problems and conflicts, do women plus water activists make sense of changing waterscapes and hydrosocial relations in their territory? This question also talks about the different geographies of knowledge production, the relationship between gender and waters, the relationships between water and territories, and also the political possibilities that emerge from this process. The theoretical framework used the political ecology of water as a broader umbrella to understand how these activists resist, reproduce, and or challenge dominant understanding of waters and relationships to waters in the territory. Also, this umbrella framework is complemented with some feminist ideas, the idea of counter mapping, of course, and the idea of hydrosocial territories at the center. The hydrosocial territories are defined as socially, naturally, politically constituted spaces that are recreated through the interactions among human practices, water flows, hydraulic technologies, biophysical elements, socioeconomic structures, and cultural political institutions. During these years, I have been conducting multi-sited ethnography and also participatory action research, including participatory mapping, and a total of 97 events has been recorded until now, without including WhatsApp interaction, which are infinite, I think. So here it is how the process started. Picture this: a group of women met during the pandemic times through Zoom twice a month and started to compose this list that you see here in the Excel with the knowledge they have as activists. So they put together all the knowledge they have about the conflicts and problems, water-related problems happening in the archipelago. And they started to place these conflicts in different parts of the territory using this map of wetlands in Chiloé. You cannot see here, but some of the categories identified in this list are also in that one. So the map is intervened too. After that, they decided to do some workshops, virtual workshops through YouTube mainly, organized in these 5 topics. Every one of them is related to the categories that they identify as the main problems or water-related problems in the archipelago. Also, the mapping process have been involving a lot of in-person activities. Some images here, there's a lot, but so you can have a broader sense of the process too. So we have been working with different tools, maps in paper, maps in plastic forms, internal workshops, and also workshops in which they have been showing these conflicts to other communities and other organizations. Also, a lot of exchange through WhatsApp. And I wanted to show this because this is not just doing the map, as a regular thing. Commonly through WhatsApp, we share every time someone sees an images that resembles a map or something like a mapping, we share that images between us. So you have a lot of inspiration here for enhancing the imagination. Also, a lot of online activities from different actions and interventions. This is the first one that they did in public in the Water Day in 2021. Then some images of the virtual seminars, internal seminars in which we are learning and teaching each other about different things. And also at the center, the process in which we are now, which is locating the list of conflicts in this map on Google Earth with enhanced icons, as you can see here. So the question is, what emerged from this process beyond mapping, you know? And also I would like to acknowledge that this is a collective process. So I acknowledge the member of the mapping group that are working with me in these issues. So for AMIPA and for us in general, mapping is not just a method, but a praxis of doing politics otherwise. You know, it's some actions, some activities that do theoretical things, methodological things, but also organizing politically. Also, we come up with this idea, which is a proposal of a new ontology in which we consider waters as territories, all together, all in plural. A more comprehensive understanding of the water-nature territorial struggles in the Chiloé archipelago and the inter and intraconnected forms of watery life that AMIPA and allies seek to defend. I will argue that in AMIPA praxis, the ontology of water as territories is built at the confluence point between 4 ontologies. This is a difficult one, so pay attention. Okay, the first ontology is the political ecology. And this is a classical view that we know, or some of us know, which understand nature, water, and territory as contested, emphasizing a struggle over resources and meanings, in which organizations and communities confront extractivist industries and activities such as forestry, aquaculture, energy in the case of the Chiloé archipelago. But there is also these socio-ecological systems that some of you may know very well, which highlights the interdependence among species and emphasizes the need to preserve key ecosystems that provide water and other ecosystem services. There is a third one, very important for us, the Mapuche-Huilliche cosmovision, in which nature is understood as Itrofil Moñen, all form of existence connected, in which water, mountains, and forests have spiritual forces, or ñens. Individuals cannot be separated from nature and other beings. And the terrestrial world is also connected to spiritual forces living in other dimensions. There is also a fourth ontology, which is the embodied and territorial feminism, based on the ontology of cuerpo territorio or body territory, which is a very prominent ontology in women's movements in Latin America. And it says that the historical and ontological continuity between bodies and territories place the defense of all forms of life at the center. I would like to acknowledge that these four ontologies are inspired by the water sovereignty flower that was created from AMIPA in one of the encounters they did in 2021. So you can see some examples of these distinct 4 ontologies. The political ecology one is the classic view of territories as contested, struggles over resources and meaning, and the main extractivist industries that AMIPA have identified as disputing the resources in the territory. Currently, AMIPA have moved to a more comprehensive understanding of these struggles that are located in the Piuchen mountain range, or the Cordillera del Piuchen, in this part. This second ontology, the socio-ecological systems, is represented by some members of AMIPA, and you can see here a picture of one of the workshops we did in 2021, in which Vanessa, a biologist from this organization, is explaining the importance of certain species and ecosystems in retaining and providing water. And also at the left, you can see a movement from one of the AMIPA's representative of the more political ecology view, moving towards a more combined understanding, including ecosystem views. Also, this is very important and more clearly a distinctive ontology is the Mapuche-Huilliche cosmology. And we can see here Daisy Cona and Lonco Clementina, two members of the organization that are teaching us some ontologies of water territories and other things. Some of the drawings from Daisy are there because they are very concerned about these conventional and hegemonic ways of doing map, which are not representative of the way that they see the spaces and the world. So Daisy particularly have been trying to imagine other ways of mapping, including these unseen dimensions. And also, if you see here, the map of Chiloé is located with the west side above, which is pretty interesting because we are used to know, the north above, but also Mapuche communities in Chile would place the east above. So we are also challenging that view in these discussions. And this is the fourth one, the embodied and territorial feminism, which is well represented by the poems from Varsovia Viveros, another member of AMIPA, which is compared, part of the poem is in Spanish, I'm sorry for this, but this is a very interesting part in which she is comparing the fragility of the sphagnum moss with the fragility and the abuse in women's bodies. So what is more interesting here is that this overlapping also allows a more enhanced or extended way to understand political ecologies, which is more close to the idea of political ontologies, and also a more comprehensive way to understand hydrosocial territories. So here we see that the water as hydrosocial territories can be also understood as hydrocosmological territories, hydrological territories, and also hydrocorporeal territories. And all these views are concentrated on materializing the defense of the Mahuida Piuchen or the Cordillera del Piuchen in Chiloé. There are some images of the overlapping ontologies too. So you can see here, at the beginning of the process, some of these women would talk about their own selves as being bodies of water. So you can see, we are water from the matrix, we as women are water, we are 70% water. But this idea started to move towards a more overlapping ontologies when you see this quotation from Isabel that says, I'm concerned with our internal waters as well as our external waters. And also this picture is from an activity that some AMIPA members participated last week with other organizations in which they are trying to imagine the body territory ontology with all the struggles they are facing and the hopes they have for a better future. So you can see here, it's very detailed, you can ask me about that after, but you can see that the Mahuida Piuchen and the Cordillera de Piuchen is also placed in this women's body. And this is also the body of one of AMIPA members, which is Daisy Cona, one of the Mapuche members of the organization. Also some overlapping ontologies, and this is a quote that makes the idea of hydrocosmological and hydrological contested territories. And I put the picture of the Piuchen, which is a serpent in the kind of mythological way of thinking about these beings, and also some pictures of the Piuchen Cordillera and some of the trees that live in there. And this is a quotation for Lonco Clementina that I love because it kind of summarizes all the ontologies together. So she says, the Piuchen mountain range is inhabited by our yen, spiritual forces, but also this is where our water reserves are located. Our territory is an island. We don't have the same mountain range as in the continent. Bedlands, pomponales, and rainforests inhabit ours. These beings are our siblings. We are one with them, one with the hydrophile moñán. We need to protect our agua dulce or drinking water before the energy industries damage it as they did with the sea. And some recent conversation about the idea of biodiversity and how the hydrophile moñán is a better principle to understand these territories full of life. And here we have some discussions from the work from Vanessa, the biologist that is in AMIPA also, and her research in progress about this little bug, which is called the chinche of Pompon, which inhabit the mosses that we are trying to protect. And when she shared this work, Lonco Clementina also says, when I was talking about hydrophile moñán, I couldn't describe what the sea of my heart of Porpiuque can see. Now I show it in the same way I was telling the state, this is not a wasteland, but a territory full of life. So as a final remark, AMIPA is an example of a more comprehensive framework in which we can think about these onto-epistemic openings, as Marisol de la Cadena would call it, which extend the conventional understanding of the political ecology to a more comprehensive ontology that I call waters as territories, in which the defense of the Piuchen is a complex whole. I said a complex whole because it's simultaneously an earth being, as Marisol de la Cadena would call it, a mountain, an unusual non-human subject that enters into the politics in unusual ways, and also a way in which activists themselves would interpret their own embodied subjectivities. So AMIPA is creating or gestating an Islander feminist practice beyond fragmented conceptualizations of water-related conflicts. And this is also interesting for multi-scalar politics and the connections they would do with other organizations in Chile. And this is maybe a reminder for you that using non-conventional methods could be also interesting in academic terms, in political terms, and also helping and accompanying an organization while they do politics. So finally, mapping is more than placing dots in a map. When we counter-map, we challenge the hegemonic geography of knowledge production in ways that reinforce what organizations do, while opening spaces for exchange and political imagination. Here, a picture of that territory too. And thank you. Gracias, Mañún. I'm sorry. I was a little nervous, so my voice was kind of broken. Sorry for that.
So since it's only Evelyn today, we have time for right after the Q&A. Go right ahead and I'll keep an eye on the chat.
I wonder about the relationship the classes like public policy or like regional governmental managers with the group as a together have like gain more voice in that changes.
So you are asking about the gender composition of the group or the relationship they have with other politicians, political instances in which they are gender, in which there is gender involved?
No, like more related to the, I don't know how Chilean institutions work, but like how are they communicating with the institutions that are maybe causing the problem and the conflict with water?
Yeah, so your question is about how they relate or communicate with the institutions or even the companies that are causing these problems? Yeah, that's a kind of a difficult relationship for these people, for activists in general and people that are resisting extractivist activities. So they have a kind of a mixed strategy in which they do, you know, like contested collective action, you know, do protests, protesting, sending letters, opposing to some of these projects very hardly, very strongly. But also sometimes they try to participate in more institutional instances in which they government representatives are discussing, for instance, water security, the future of water security in Chiloé, or involved in some institutional assessment of the impacts of some projects. So they try to participate in these instances too, while also resisting and opposing to these kind of projects. Okay, my relationship with AMIPA. I started to collaborate with them in April 2021, which was the second year of my PhD. And I'm from Chiloé, but I have been working in other places of the country for a while. I was mostly placed in Santiago, the capital city, for a while. So when I applied to the PhD, I was thinking and maybe working with a group of women in that place, which I had a previous relationship. But when I started to develop my proposal, a former interviewee that I have for some other projects in Chile just put this post in Facebook that says, this group, Asamblea of Mujeres Insulares por las Aguas, is created. And I was like, oh my God, this is happening in Chiloé. And also it was very much aligned with the theoretical framework I was imagining, and Kai knows that because since the very beginning, we were discussing about kind of political ecology, indigenous ontologies, and something like that. So I wrote to her, and I went to the meeting in April. It was, I don't know, maybe the sixth meeting they had. I just presented my work there, or my proposal, and I offer my help in collaborating with the organization and some things that they might find helpful. And this is how it started. Yeah. Hi, and then done.
Great to see how this is shaping up. So I'm curious, following on both the questions, which I was wondering about as well, how the members of AMIPA, so they're all separately activists, are they? Is that in some form?
Yes.
So how are they using what you are doing collectively, with the ontologies and that kind of thing? How are they using that in their own?
Okay. So your question is how the organization is using the work that we are doing. So there are, I would say, organizations and the member. Yeah. Yes. So first I will clarify that AMIPA is an assembly. So these women are also coming from different organizations in which they are also activists. Some of these organizations are water related. Some of these are indigenous communities. Some of them are feminist organizations. Some of them are also related with other issues, but at some point connected to water. So I would say, I like to say that the mapping process is kind of a rhizomatic process. I don't know if I'm pronouncing well, but it's at the center process. So I help to continue the process they already started, but also different members of AMIPA take some of the threads and do other things too. So I'm kind of concentrated in composing or putting this map of conflicts, which is one of the threads in the webpage. But other members of AMIPA are doing other work with this. So we applied for another project, for instance, to kind of register some testimonies and narrations. So the project is the Memories of Water and Resistance, and this is led by other AMIPA member. So as you would see in some of the pictures, if I can go back, the mapping thing is also, and some of the AMIPA members would say, is a very good material to start a conversation. So for instance, one of the picture and political conversations are also methodological ones. So the one on the right, for instance, is some AMIPA members. I was not there at the moment, meeting with some students from different universities and talking about the process of mapping and how they come up with the idea of the different categories. And also the map is like reverse with the Piuchen above, all this process that we have developed together. But also in the middle, this is a political meeting of one of the national scale most important water organizations in Chile that was happening in Chiloé in January. So they were presenting the work that we have been doing and the conflicts that are happening in the archipelago. And the idea of the ontologies is like, I was presenting this for them last week. And it's funny because it's kind of a fancy way to talk about the things they do and they think all the time. So it makes a lot of sense for them, although it seems very abstract in some ways. But after that conversation, for instance, the idea of the Piuchen as an earth being, as Marisol de la Cadena would call it, open up another conversation about protecting the Piuchen as following the idea of the rights of nature, for instance. And we haven't think about that before. So the idea of ontologies would open this more political view to think about the Piuchen in a more comprehensive sense. So again, it's kind of at the center process. We have been working in this and a lot of other activities together. And also every member of the organization could take a thread and follow in different ways, methodologically, academically, politically. It was Dan and then Mauricio.
That was really fascinating. Excited to ask some more questions maybe after, but I just had like one kind of technical like methods question to understand a little bit what you did. I'm wondering, yeah, how much it seemed like the relational ontologies you said, these like hydrosocial, hydrological, they kind of like they map directly back to the original 4 ontologies that you listed of like political ecology and social ecological systems. But is that true, or are they not directly linked?
Okay, so you're asking about the relationship between the 4 ontologies during the process, maybe after and now, or something like that, if I interpret it
Yeah, you
well.
set it up as like a framework of
Yes.
4 kind of ontologies, and then you had a more these relational ontologies that you spoke about after.
Yeah.
They trace directly back to those original.
Yeah, so maybe that is a kind of a conceptual question. So I would say that at the beginning, AMIPA was mainly following this conventional political ecology view of first generation political ecology, which is more concentrated on the idea of the struggles over resources and meanings. So, and this is the start of the process. And then you have this kind of 4 ontologies, more or less in some members of AMIPA. So the indigenous member obviously would represent the indigenous ontologies. Some feminist members would represent the more embodied territorial feminism. And the biologists would represent the social ecological systems, but they were kind of separated. You know, every member would bring their own perspectives. But through the process of mapping and doing these workshops and learning together and teaching each other and talking and analyzing and all the process, these ontologies started to overlap. And then feminism and territorial ontology is kind of more developed in the base. So now that we have is more close to the 3rd generation political ecology, which Mario Blaser and Arturo Escobar would say is a political ontology. So it's a movement from considering the struggles over territories and meanings to political struggles, to political ontologies of struggles. So struggles for different ways of doing and being in the world. And this kind of the broader umbrella right now, in which these other ontologies also provide some complementary openings. It's clear?
I think that makes sense. My follow-up
Yes.
is it's a kind of like combined inductive, deductive approach where like you have these ideas of what people might think, and then ideas in the room started to develop, and then
I was very clear about the classical political ecology, the indigenous ontology. The feminism at the beginning was not clear because it was different feminisms and it was not an explicit conversation at the beginning. So this is why I'm saying, you know, they are creating or gestating a situated feminist perspective, which makes sense from the point of view of inhabiting an island in relationship with this particular territory from these particular bodies, and also not just human bodies. So the feminism is kind of developing in certain ways. But for the political ecology and the social ecological system, I started to think that they were some perspectives, not ontologies. At the beginning it was like, okay, we have different ontologies, but these are different perspectives, not necessarily ontologies. But then I went back over and over to my data, and also I did some biographical interviews with them. This is why I have, you know, the individual perspective and also the collective perspective, and analyzing the speeches, some of the intervention, the activities and stuff. And I started to realize that these other two were kind of perspective at the beginning, but now are more ontologies. And you can see in the picture that I was showing, you know, that it kind of summarizes everything. Sorry, a lot of pictures. This one, you know, like in a body, there are a lot of extractivist activities, also the movements, also the idea of recovering the language in the case of Daisy, which is the one that was the body placed there, but also trying to integrating this idea and some of the concepts. And some of the quotations I was showing, you know, like this is, Lonco Clementina is amazing because she has to do a lot of speeches in public sphere, international forums, and she's always kind of, sometimes it's very frustrating for her not to make able to translate the indigenous Mapuche Huilliche ontology to other languages. So she's integrating some of these other ideas, but in this kind of amazing way to say everything in just one intervention. And also, for instance, one of the members, Vanessa, when she introduced herself, she says, I'm a biologist, and this is not just my profession, this is who I am. And she suffered for all the different forms of life that are threatened under these conditions. So this is why I came to the idea that these are transitioning to ontological views, which the central point would be that they question the separation between culture and nature, or between individuals and nature, or between human beings and non-human beings. They think about themselves, the problems happening in the archipelago in these more integrated forms. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it was so much. It was Mauricio and then Ta. Yes, could be more. That's the counting in November.
Can you talk a little bit about you managed to connect with them, and assuming that it's not always the same people participating, it's not always the same topic, or we move on to other things. How do you connect all of these events, and not just in terms of analyzing, but also the process of the creation of constantly evolving? And the second part would be like, what's the next? Like, has there been into thinking how women are empowered in Chiloé? Are there any next steps that they're thinking of?
Yeah, oh, big question. Okay, so I have to repeat that for people in Zoom. So your question is about how did I analyze these 97 events with different people participating and maybe some different topics every time, and also what is next in terms of the consequences for women's empowerment, if I Okay. So 97 events, and this started like, I was trying to compose the abstract of my first chapter for the dissertation. And it was pretty much concentrated on the mapping thing. You know, my question was about mapping. So I started to analyze the data I have for the mapping. And then I was, okay, but the mapping process is so interconnected with the evolution of AMIPA as an organization that it's impossible to not go back to other sources of information. So I started to revise again the notes I have for different meetings and some of the interventions that they did in public, some interviews, so meeting with other organizations and stuff. And I realized that since the first meeting they have, the mapping ideas or ideas around mapping were already present. So it's been an ongoing conversation in all these events. So this is why I had to come back to Leila and say, Leila, this is so much, this is not just mapping, it's more than that. So Leila suggested to think about the idea of territory in a broader ways, and maybe think about the mapping as the methodology or praxis that made possible the emergence of these topics. So I'm an anthropologist, and my formation is like being an ethnographic, an ethnographer. So when we do ethnography, sometimes we connect some threads that seems not important in some organizations or some activities. So maybe one sentence that someone did, but you see the connection of this topic with a thing that is happening before. So, and then I had to just pick one focus. So Leila was saying just, that knows about that. We have been talking about that. It's very difficult, but the idea of waters as territories kind of make that possible, to talk about these different issues and these different sources of data and the commitments that they have. And also it's been a co-produced process all the time, because they have to talk about the mapping things in different instances too. So we meet and we talk about these ideas, and they come up with some new ideas too. So the second part of the question, I don't like too much the word empowering or women's empowering. As you maybe could see, they are already empowered. So maybe what is next for us is kind of thinking in different ways in which we wanted to connect academic discussions with more political practices. So when I was discussing this idea for my first chapter, they were super kind of flattered, like, oh, we have done a lot of issues and this is super interesting and makes a lot of sense. But also they would say, this is very academic and maybe we can imagine other ways to put this knowledge in other formats. So I suggested that maybe we could compose a book, but more kind of non-academic book, you know, so everyone could do a contribution. So we can have, for instance, Lonco Clementina's speech in one of the instances that she talks all the time, or some of the poems that some activists make. Some of them also do other artistic forms of expressions, or others are in the academic sphere too. So maybe they could write something about a concept, an idea, a method. So it could be like more like a collage. And it could make sense also for other women in other territories or also in Chiloé, organizing and trying to express the ideas and the defense that they want to do in different ways, not just academic ones. And also, as I was saying, there is this thread about the protecting the Piuchen. When I was presenting this last week, Lonco Clementina was with David Boyd in a forum, ONU forum. They met and they find each other that day. It was awesome too. And we were talking through WhatsApp, and she was very frustrated about, again, this idea of trying to translate the importance of the Piuchen in a whole sense that is more than the Western terms of simple mountain, you know? And she was saying, I'm saying the whole day that this is a subject of rights as a person, as you and me. And I was saying, Alonco Clementino, this is so wonderful because we are discussing about, in more theoretical terms, about this idea of Earth being, you know, and non-human subjects that enters into the politics in unusual ways. So people that are forming in Western terms would say, what is that? You know, so it's also a conversation between theoretical things and political things, and that is the most interesting part for me. Ta.
You're such a really good one. Very organized and way more than I am. And yeah, it's really good to see something that really resonates with the other side of it that I work on this.
Yes.
That's part of the mountain range, but different shape of water.
Yes, yes.
Well, my question is actually about the overlap with ontology that you mentioned, and sort of, I could see, you know, them being in conflict with this constitution within that as well. I'm curious about how, you know, those conflicts or conversations might get might be reconciled, or what happens in that process. And it seems like there is that more
Yes. Yeah.
like related to. But the image that you show still has a human body, and this is curious, like if this is moving away from also like human supremacy or just like human as the center, or it's more responsive. That's beyond. I think that's.
Yeah. So you are curious about the the ontological conflicts, and also placing that women's body at the center and the non-anthropocentric views that can connect from that. Yeah, so I would say that when I showed the flower to them last week, I was saying this is also a very interesting tool to place every one of us, you know, in at different moments in different parts of this flower. So for not all of MIPA members are at the center, you know, this is kind of the collective understanding. And depending on the moment and the people you are talking to, also they would use this different kind of movement between ontologies. And there are also some, I wouldn't say conflicts, because they are working in a very friendly way all the time. And this is one of the wonderful ways that they do the work, like very feminist based, you know, like being able to talk from different points of view, different ontologies, but having this, what again Marisol de la Cadena would call partial connections. We don't have to agree on everything and have the same ontology. We have to just find a way to communicate through these different ontologies. This is a partial connection in a very good concept for me too. So for instance, the most common conflict when some of AMIPA members would say about water, you know, we have to protect this resource. And this again, come back to the conversation. No, remember, we have to talk about water in other terms. But again, this difficulty to communicate to other people what water is in more complex ways is almost impossible. So they have to use some of these tools too. So different members of AMIPA would also use these overlapping ontologies in different ways. And the idea of the women's body here, this is also important. You know, this almost kind of, again, different threads. So this one is a picture in which it was a feminist encounter. So they were using the methodology of body territories to think about the future of the Chiloé territory and the hope they have and the struggles and also the alliances. So it's interesting because in we have some previous activities very similar to this, but the Puchen appears here for the first time as part of the body, and also other parts, other beings that are non-human. But also This is why I put that here. There is a conversation about these other beings, and a lot of members of AMIPAL, as we were talking about, so when we talk about, for instance, Cindy was saying, if I remember clearly, when we talk about, we were discussing this idea of the rights of nature to protect the Piuchen. And she was also coming back to the idea of this little bag and saying, okay, and she quote Gudinas, which is a Latin American scholar in political ecology. And she was reminding us that sometimes when we talk about the rights of nature, we talk about this kind of majestic beings, like, or very, or animals that are beautiful and very important and big, whales or elephants. So they were talking about this little bag, which is so tiny and seems so insignificant for people, but it's very important because it's closely related to one of the ecosystems that they wanted to protect. So, and they were doing like jokes about this would be our kind of, I don't know how to say that in English, but we have to create a costume of this little bag and use it in our activities so people would know more.
Mascot?
Yes, a mascot. Like this would be, this little one would be our new mascot. So they are also transitioning. Some of them already are there, like Lonco Clementina, for instance, but some of them that come from more Western views are also integrating these connections with other non-human beings. It's almost time. Oh my God.
There are a couple of questions in the chat that maybe I could just ask you.
Okay.
Yeah, why don't we give Evelyn
Thanks, everyone.
yeah, folks are more than welcome to keep at